Hello and welcome back to NoBS. Today we turn to talking about these big social gatherings that have been happening across the country. Apparently, some are okay, but others are not okay. And that's what the media is telling us. They're telling us a very biased, a very different spin on things. And we're going to go over it all today. Essentially, the media loves supporting these protesters and these demonstrations and these BLM gatherings and these protests for justice, these anti-cop things. Those are all fine and dandy. Those are great demonstrations that the media encourages. But on the flip side, President Trump is having a rally next week, which I'm very excited for, by the way. I wish I could go, but it's all the way in Oklahoma. So I'll be watching from home and talking about it here for sure. But the problem is the media is going after this hardcore. They don't want conservatives and Republicans, specifically Trump supporters, they don't want us gathering and celebrating and having rallies of our own. Essentially, this is a right wing rally. And you could easily say that these left wing gatherings are left wing rallies. I mean, it's all liberals there. They're supporting their causes. Sure, they call them different things. They call them protests and demonstrations, and they have a different framing on them. They act like they're more justified because they've been race baiting so hard. But essentially, they're very similar if you think about it. And the problem is the media coverage. The media is super biased about this, and it's just very, very in your face. It's very disrespectful. And as I've said before, it's insulting our intelligence, really. It's like very much like, oh, they don't even care. They're not even trying to lie to us anymore. They're not even trying to kind of make it look better at all. They're just straight up saying two different things. Here's our first example. This is a tweet from Mark Hemingway. He's got a picture, and these articles came out a few hours apart, I believe, a little over an hour apart. The first one says, Rally for Black Trans Lives draws packed crowd to Brooklyn Museum Plaza. Here you see tons of people in Brooklyn, everywhere. People are shoulder to shoulder. Obviously not social distancing. Obviously everyone's not wearing masks and staying super clean. And, I'm not really officially against that. I mean, I think we should try and stay safe and keep ourselves distanced when we can. But if people like this want to risk it and they want to go out and they want to support these causes or do something else, like go to a movie, that's their right too. People can have that option. We don't need to force it on everyone. But apparently the liberals think they do, because the next article says President Trump plans to rally his supporters next Saturday for the first time since most of the country was shuttered by the virus. But health experts are questioning that decision. So right away, look how similar it is. It's just like the same kind of thing, two different events, but one is okay, one is encouraged even. This is like, oh, this is a great event. This is support this. Let's save the world. And, you got to also recognize, I mean, Black trans lives, that's just like such a specific group. We're talking about like very, very, very small percent of the population. Like the whole LGBT population is only a few percentages. Trans people are like 0.5%. So we're talking about like 0.25%, like not even nearly as many people in this crowd. Like there's more people in this crowd than there are Black trans lives across the whole planet, probably. I mean, I don't know. There might be more. There might be a few more, but it's close. It's close. And that's not to say they can't do it. It's just interesting and funny to me that they're going for these causes that are basically kind of like not really as important. Like Trump, on the other hand, he's trying to save the country. He's talking about real issues for real people, like our nation. Like he's talking about all Americans. Like we're talking about 300 million people he's trying to help versus them helping like a few 10 people. They're supporting all of that. Anyway, the point is, though, the hypocrisy, the really, really bad hypocrisy. And that's why a lot of people are saying this reminds them of 1984. 1984 was that sort of a futuristic dystopian novel from the past, and it coined a lot of terms like news speak and double speak and these kinds of ideas, because basically back then they kind of saw this coming. They saw the leftists kind of taking over the public and the media and using these kinds of biased tricks, like propaganda tricks, to control the public. They control the news and they control the narrative, and that's why things get so messed up like this. It's very similar to 1984 right now, and it really needs to kind of stop. It's like, come on, why can't we have one event? They've had these rallies every day for the last 2 weeks, but Trump has one, and this, by the way, it's getting really, really planned out. Like I've already seen the details. They've worked out the schedule. They're also, everyone that shows up is getting a mask, hand sanitizer. Everyone's getting bottles of water. Like it's going to be really safe and secure as possible. Now, Granted, there is still a chance. There's a chance you could catch something. There's a chance you can not just catch the famous virus, you could catch anything. Like there's always a chance when you leave the house. And my point is, I'm fine with these people risking it. If we can risk it, why can't we have an event too? And it's just super messed up that the media is just so straight up about this hypocrisy. Now, the next example has an even more kind of powerful comparison because they're actually comparing this quote from 1984. So now we're going to read that and see how it compares. This is references. So it's kind of cliche, like this guy says, like it's kind of almost past the time to reference 1984, but it just works so well. It's almost like you can't stop because it's just so relevant. Like, for example, check this out. It says, the power of holding two contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accepting both of them, to tell deliberate lies while genuinely believing in them, to forget any fact that has become inconvenient, and then, when it becomes necessary again, to draw it back from the oblivion for just as long as it is needed, to deny the existence of objective reality, and all the while to take account of the reality which one denies. All this is indispensably necessary. Even in using the word doublethink, it is necessary to exercise doublethink. For by using the word, one admits that one is tampering with reality. By a fresh act of doublethink, one erases this knowledge. And so on indefinitely, with the lie always one leap ahead of the truth. That's from George Orwell's 1984. Now, as we were saying, it is a very, very close comparison. You're talking about believing two things simultaneously that totally contradict each other. And this is what the news is doing. This is what we're seeing in real time. We're seeing them pull this off, and they're really just shameless about it. It's really just kind of like, how can you get away with this? You know, I mean, don't you think there would be like a fact checker? Like, how come NBC hasn't checked these tweets out? And why are they even, why is it all of a sudden the virus is a problem whenever Trump wants to do something? Like, all of a sudden, it's just their go to. They're using it as an excuse. And that's the messed up thing, too. It's like taking advantage of this news story and this horrible tragedy, which is hurting people. It is causing people to get sick. I mean, no one's denying that. Like, that's the other thing. Like, I don't like when this turns into a whole, oh, this is a hoax. Like people think it's fake or something. Like I've never heard anyone say it was totally fake unless it was a joke. I never heard anyone legitimately try and deny its existence. I think the whole point is it's overblown. And then on top of that, it's also overhyped and used as a weapon by the media. And NBC News is just one of the worst of them. I mean, it's just really obvious and really terrible. And, we're stuck. We're in a point where how are we going to fix this? How are we supposed to combat this kind of media that's just so prevalent? And they have all the backup in the world. They have these social media sites backing them up. Twitter, every single website has them on the front lines. They're pushing this stuff out there. And let's see what the responses say. If you can't tell the difference between people forced to make a stand and a state-sanctioned handjob festival, quote Orwell. So this is someone trying to act like they're wrong. They're trying to go after the original tweeter, and he talks about how cognitive dissonance is a hell of a drug. So they're trying to justify it. I think it's because the Trump rally is going to be indoors or at some kind of whatever sports arena or something is usually where they're at. And I can understand okay, things are closed versus open, but it's like, come on, these people are so crammed together. Look at this. How is this any different? Like these guys are all crammed together, and the Trump thing, it's the same thing. They just want to make up excuses and pretend their stuff is okay when ours isn't. In addition, this guy makes another good point. It says there's also probably a difference between Tulsa, Oklahoma, which only had 62 deaths, versus New York City, which is the death capital of the world. I mean, that's the biggest site. And so that's another great point by this David Burge guy who brought this to our attention. And he deserves credit because it's like, yeah, this thing happened in New York City, the worst, most affected area. This place should certainly be considering more lockdowns. But on the flip side, Trump went to Tulsa, Oklahoma. They have more space out there, less people, less cases. It's just safer. It just makes sense. It all adds up and it's all logical. But the point is the media is not operating in logical ways. They're not giving you truthful things and they're not portraying it in a faithful way. Just a product guy has a point here. It says, it's absolutely insane. We are now in the everything I don't agree with is bad. Everything I agree with is good. So true then and so true today. Vague references to 1984 seem cliched, but quotes from 1984 are always dead on. Like so many, it's a book everyone thinks they know and few have actually read. Read the book. In 1984, my freshman lit class focused solely on this book and a few Orwell essays. Okay, he's trying to get more specific with the reference, supporting George Orwell's writing and kind of saying how, yeah, there's loose references. A lot of people want to just kind of reference it real quick. But here we're talking about a specific quote that is just dead on. We already read the quote and it is just too close to home. And it's just showing that this NBC stuff is terrible. They're being anti-Trump. They're obviously biased, and they shouldn't be. They should be a more middle ground news network. They should have conservative writers and liberal writers. They should be taking stories and not making them these essays and these opinion pieces. They shouldn't be editorializing. I mean, that's what NBC News used to be. NBC is one of the oldest TV channels. They've had news on there forever. Like, I think Meet the Press is one of their shows. And regardless, they've failed. They've lost the plot, and now we're seeing the whole bias thing come to light, and basically 1984 is coming to be. That about wraps things up. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Make sure you comment your thoughts on everything below. Also hit that like button to help us get shared, and until next time, have a great day.